Can't get this damn thing into portrait. God damn it. Hello. See if there's something we can do here. No, it looks like I'm stuck on goddamn portrait here, guys. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. All right, well, if any of you know how I can change this to landscape, let me know. Otherwise, this is the RPG Pundit, final boss and internet shitlords. Coming to you live. Coming in hot because can't believe that a month ago, the last time I did a live stream, I was freezing my ass off, and now here I am, and it's unbelievably hot here. Summer has come, and no, I haven't killed Catboy yet. I'm not. Catboy is the master of his own destiny, and somehow has managed to keep himself from being horribly killed. All right. I know some of you don't like portrait. I didn't mean to do portrait. My bad. I don't know how to change it. So tonight I'm going to be talking, first of all, about the subject of the witch hunt against James Raggi, who is the publisher of Lamentations of the Flame Princess. And you can see his book right here. I think this is how I'm going to do it, because I know that there's some of you here, you're making comments, and that's awesome. I'm very glad you're here. Just be sure to save any questions that are not related to this subject until the end. And at the end, I'll do a general Q&A for those who want to ask me stuff that isn't related to the current SJW witch hunt of the day. And I will ask you all before I start, or probably repeat it again over the course of the evening, depending on how many people come in later, that if you want me to do more videos, if you want me to do more live streams, hopefully get better at doing them than this, then please be sure to support me on Patreon. You can find the Patreon link in the description below. And if you can't support me on Patreon, you can support me on PayPal. You go to my blog and there's a PayPal button there. And besides that, please share the videos anywhere that you think people are going to watch them. Share this video right now if you want to, if you know that there's people up at night and that want to come and hear me talk about this. Go for it, right? I mean, you're very welcome to spread the word. We've got, I think, 574 subscribers now, which is a very good amount, and they just keep growing, and the more we grow, then the more the news gets out there, so I'm very appreciative to everyone. So, topic of the evening. Those of you who watch this channel, most of you are probably familiar with the OSR. Now, there's some of you that might not be familiar with the OSR. Well, you know about D&D, I'm sure. I mean, what the hell are you doing here if you're not familiar with Dungeons & Dragons? And you know that there are third-party products that are D&D products. And the OSR is the biggest single movement among those third-party products. They are games, radically revisioned games that are based on the old school D&D rules. And I did a video, you can find it later on the channel here, it's somewhere down near the bottom because it was an early video, where I talked about the OSR and just how awesome it is. It's mind-blowing. And James Raggi, the guy who did Lamentations of the Flame Princess, was, credit where credit is due, very responsible for its awesomeness. Because before James Raggi came along, the OSR was mostly just clone products and published adventures. Clone products, I mean that they were literally just rewritings of old school D&D rules with as little variation as possible. James Raggi published Lamentations of the Flame Princess, which is a game that is based on the old school D&D rules, but with several important changes to them. He innovated it to make it into a grittier kind of system with some very interesting twists, slightly different magic system with some interesting new sort of weird magic spells, and he changed the combat bonuses for the fighter. And in retrospect today, it doesn't seem like a lot of difference, because there have been other products that have come out in the OSR that make much more radical changes to the rules. But all that happened in part because he kind of broke ranks of these people who were saying we have to keep it completely strict within the context of the D&D rules. And he said, no, what we have to do is follow the box of old school design. It has to be a game that is recognizably D&D, but then you do interesting things with it. And that sparked off what I call the second wave of OSR games, which are games that are based on the original D&D rules, make important differences to create different styles and genres. And then that exploded into a bunch of other stuff. And today there's tons of OSR games. My own Dark Albion is an OSR setting. My Lion and Dragon and Arrows of Indra are OSR games. So all of these things are a part of the OSR movement. OSR, it means old school Renaissance or old school revival or old school revolution, depending on who you ask. But it's a radical design concept. And if you haven't discovered the OSR yet, you really need to check it out, because it'll change your whole perspective of D&D and what D&D is capable of doing. So that's the first thing to know about James Raggi. The second thing to know about James Raggi is that he is one of the most successful publishers within the OSR. He published his own stuff, but then he's also one of very few publishers who have made a point of connecting with a bunch of freelancers, people who don't publish their own work, and publishing games for him. It's very rare. You have to be very well known, like myself basically, to get a publisher, a small press publisher, to go to the trouble of publishing your game. And I've never had a problem with that because of my previous fame. But most people in the OSR, you're kind of stuck. Unless you become a self-publisher, it's very hard to get something, unless you go with someone like James Raggi, who has made quite a business out of publishing adventures and other books based on the Lamentations concept, but by people other than himself. And among these, he's published a large number of people who are, what you could call the purse puppies of the SJWs, right? You've got a lot of the people he's published are LGBT or are, people of color, women, whatever. And also, a lot of them are self-identified progressive leftists, right? So that's the second thing you need to know about him. The third thing is that James himself has never been especially political. He's done some posts that are political, but most of what he's done is that he has been a kind of, edgy publisher of products that have, some themes that are very adult themes. And he's been an ardent defender of free speech, which is one of the things I very much admire about him. So James Raggi did all this, but he also kind of very much oriented himself on the side of the left, right? I mean, most of the people that he has published are people who identify as left-wing. And I think that he had this idea that because he's got these avant-garde lefty artists in his stable, as it were, that he was okay, right? I mean, that he was not, that everybody was going to be cool with what he did, right? And I don't think he got fundamentally the nature of the modern SJW, which is that, Raggi is a target. He's a target first and foremost. He was bound to be a target first and foremost because he is pro-free speech. And free speech is something that is fundamentally anathema to the modern progressive left. They despise it, right? So that he was there was a target on him from the very start. He was also a target, and he had already experienced people harassing or criticizing his work because some of the themes that he did fell on the wrong side of the puritanical feminist movement, the anti-sex feminists or people like that, stuff that they accused him of being too explicit or racy, or images. Ironically, he has the iconic character of the Flame Princess, who is a heroic adventurer type, but in a lot of the images that he published, she's fighting and being badly injured or horribly hurt or things like that. And he even got accused by certain feminists of promoting violence against women because he has a strong female character that isn't invulnerable. How dare he? How dare he not show her always triumphing over the evil patriarchy or something like that, right? So right from the start, you had that kind of situation. And somehow he didn't clue into the fact that he was far from immune to this kind of witch hunt. And now here's what happened. He a couple of days ago, he posed for a picture at an event where I guess he was there with Jordan Peterson. Someone asked here, who is Jordan Peterson? Well, Jordan Peterson is a psychologist and professor at the University of Toronto, formerly, I believe, at Harvard. He's a writer. He published an academic book that is extremely groundbreaking in the subject of symbolism and that sort of thing, called Maps of Meaning. And then he's made some very impressive lectures, many of which are online on his YouTube channel. And then he ended up becoming a target of the SJW movement because he publicly said that he would reject legislation that was being proposed in Canada that would essentially criminalize the use of the lack of use of certain pronouns, right? That if you didn't call people by whatever pronoun they wanted to be called, he, she, her, share, zit, or whatever, then you could get brought up on charges. You could be fined. If you didn't pay the fine, you could go to jail. So he spoke up very loudly against that. And of course, then he got accused of being transphobic, homophobic, racist, sexist, and everything else. And the place where the twist came is that Peterson didn't make a fawning apology and grovel at the feet of these people and let them, take his job and destroy his life. Instead, he just kept arguing with them and presented a book called 12 Rules for Life, which became a huge bestseller. This book is not really an academic book. It's, I guess, what you could call a self-help book. And it talks about, using some of the classical virtues to sort out your life as an individual. Starting with his first rule of life is clean your room. And of course, this idea that, people should be dutiful and resilient and should fix themselves and take responsibility for their lives only enraged the SJWs more. It was like, how dare he suggest that people be anything but victims? And he got accused, of course, of, being misogynist, sexist, racist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. At the same time, his book became a bestseller because an enormous amount of people, especially many young men who had spent their entire lives in the vacuum of postmodernism, the moral bankruptcy of that, had felt like their lives were directionless, like they had no order in their world. They didn't have the foundation for how to actually function in life, and this book helped them. Now, frankly, I think that 12 Rules for Living is actually a pretty it's not a profound text of philosophy or mysticism or anything else, but in the context of 2018, in the world we live today, astoundingly, this book, which would have been something fairly unremarkable 50 years ago, compared to other stuff that was coming out at that time, today is groundbreaking and revolutionary and incredibly controversial, to the point that they've tried to, ban him from speaking in universities. They've tried to boycott his book. They've tried to force bookstores not to carry the book, all of this sort of stuff in defiance of the evil that he represents for, telling people to clean their rooms. James Raggi said that he himself was passing through some kind of a dark time in his life. I don't know the details about that, but that's what he said. And that Jordan Peterson's book helped him. And so he had admiration for Jordan Peterson. And admitting so was, wow, that was a big mistake for him, wasn't it? Because he went over, he took a picture with Jordan Peterson, and the entire SJW contingent of the D&D world went apeshit, right? They went absolutely nuts. Because how dare he take a picture with that, oh my God, alt-right Nazi or something like that. What happened after he took the picture? Well, howls of outrage from everywhere. But the most notable things that many of the people in Raggi's own little circle, the people he thought were his people, turned on him absolutely viciously and publicly and denounced him and attacked him. And so you had people like Kale Chenier, who is one of the people that he published, that he helped, that he gave a leg up and made famous, that got him an Emmy, for what that's worth. Ennies are garbage, but, he got him that. And he ended up, Kale Chenier, publicly, making a claim of denouncing, like as if this was, Maoist China, where he made it clear that he rejects the anti-revolutionary values of James Raggi and that he would never work with him again. And Zach Smith, who is a well-known douchebag that was enormously helped by Raggi, though Smith did already have some fame of his own because he had done porn and then proceeded to play D&D with porn stars. So I guess they kind of mutually helped each other a little bit. Zach went out in public to say that he was screaming at James Raggi and that James Raggi was ignorant, and he just turned on him viciously as well. So these were two of the people that were best known within the stable of people that had been published under Lamentations of the Flame Princess. And besides that, we've had a number of other people, some of which are directly associated, some of which are peripherally associated in the sense of having been part of the Lamentations of the Flame Princess community, if you want to call it that. And some of which are just, well-known SJWs in the D&D universe, who posted all kinds of things about him. They have publicly called, and you can look it up on Google Plus or on do a search for James Raggi on Twitter. There are people calling him a white nationalist. There are people calling him somebody who covers for the alt-right. There are people who have said, there's one guy on Twitter who said it's not enough to boycott him. You have to spit in James Raggi's face anytime you see him. Okay? This is what they said about him. You have to spit in his face. That's what they said. And of course, they've called for a boycott, and people have said that they shouldn't stop until Lamentations goes bankrupt because of the evil that James Raggi did in posting with Jordan Peterson. This is the response. So there you go. And besides that, you've now had a number of other people who have come forward with hand-wringing posts, lefties who despise the OSR for the most part, plus a few of what I call the mushy middle, right? The moderates who are very worried about not appearing to be a potential target of the SJWs, that have come forward saying, well, this kind of taints the entire OSR. The whole OSR has been completely poisoned by white nationalism because James Raggi took a picture with a mild-mannered psychology professor from Toronto, right? And so they've said this, and they've said, well, I'm leaving the OSR forever. A number of people who have nothing to do with Lamentations itself, have never been published by Lamentations, but have been writing themselves products or were claiming that they were going to write, have now said, well, no, now I am no longer part of the OSR. I am leaving the OSR forever. I am boycotting it, but not just boycotting it. I am renouncing any involvement with it. The OSR is not me and I am not it, or something like that. To which, my answer would kind of be, well, bye, you know, great, good, you know, like we don't want shit like you. But it's all meant, it's not really about these assholes leaving because no one cares about them. It's about them putting out this message that is meant to try to make it look like, oh, you know, the OSR is dead, or the OSR, you know, like they said with gamers are dead after Gamergate and stuff like this, right? Is like, it's to push this narrative that the OSR is now tainted forever, and so you have to leave it, which has been the SJW goal forever, because the OSR was a counter movement in many ways to the preferred role-playing movements of the SJWs, right? The preferred role-playing movement of the SJWs was the story gaming movement, which rejected D&D completely because, of course, D&D is an evil game where you play white nationalists and kill orcs, which to these people, they think orcs are, you know, people of color, and that the whole thing is just some kind of Nazi exercise. Plus, it's anti-feminist because it was written by a white man. So, you know, you can't support D&D, and OSR is based on D&D. So instead, what they want you to do is play these games that's been made by incredibly untalented people about, you know, university professors talking about their sexuality, or, you know, slaves being punished by their slave masters in the Old South, or, you know, teenage girls working at a McDonald's going on a smoke break. And this all sounds like I've just exaggerated, but all three of those are actual real story games that have been wildly promoted by the story games movement and the SJWs as being somehow groundbreaking, even though they're absolute garbage, right? Like design-wise and in every other sense, they're just garbage, right? But this is what they wanted. They didn't want the OSR. They wanted story games. But the story games were never popular. They were never actually successful. Certainly not at the level of influence that the OSR has had. How influential has the OSR been? Well, very simple. You guys, most of you guys probably know that I was a consultant who provided a significant amount of guidance and influence in the creation of 5th edition D&D. Why was I hired as a consultant? Because I was an OSR writer. Also because I'm well known as an RPG critic and have a very critical eye to break down what I see as flaws in systems and all that. But I'm pretty sure that I and also Zach Smith were both hired as consultants mainly because we were OSR, and because D&D, when 4th edition turned, which was influenced by story game ideas of what D&D should be, 4th edition was influenced by story games. When that turned out to be an economic disaster for them, where they lost 2/3 of their customer base, the people that were, you know, behind 5th edition said, well, we made a mistake, right? And so they turned to what was actually the most dynamic, successful, and creative movement in gaming at that moment, and still today, which is the OSR. And they got some people from the OSR to try to help make D&D not into an OSR game, obviously, but into a game that would be at least palatable to many people who are also drawn to the appeal of the OSR. And that's more or less what we did, and that's more or less one of the big reasons why off the bat D&D 5th edition was successful. It was later much more successful, mainly because of stuff like Stranger Things and, you know, other associated nostalgia. So I'm not taking all the credit by any means for D&D's success today, but that wouldn't necessarily have happened were D&D 5th edition rules a piece of crap like 4th edition were. So that's the influence level of the OSR. So what did the story games people do? Well, a number of them who had spent the last few years shitting all over the OSR suddenly engaged in an enormous act of revisionist history and claimed that they always loved the OSR, that they were part of the OSR from day one. And not only that, they helped invent it, and they were the influential people of the OSR. Basically, entryism, Alinsky rules, right? You go in there, you take over the movement. The problem they had is that the OSR isn't a movement with a central leadership. There is, as much as some people have falsely tried to claim it, there is no Pope of the OSR. There isn't even a single coherent movement within the OSR, because you have the OSR first wave, what you could call the true grognards, the ones that are the people that really only want to play old edition D&D, who at one point dominated the OSR and today are just a small minority of it. And then you have the second and third wave movements, where people, the second wave was mostly concerned with creating interesting new rule systems. And the third wave, many of the people who are in the second wave are also in the third wave, like myself, who are interested in creating old school settings that also make use of the rules. It's a slight difference, but an important one, right? In the one, you're making rules to fit a genre. In the second, you're making a world and then creating OSR rules to fit that world, which is what I did in the sense of medieval authentic role-playing with Dark Albion and with Lion and Dragon, which were the rules for Dark Albion. So there are all these different movements and there are all these different publishers, and they frankly just don't care what the SJW entryists think. Very, very few of them do anyways. So the entryists found that they weren't actually being listened to. They hide away in little, Discord servers and corners of Google Plus, talking about how OSR they are, and at the same time how horrible and toxic and rape culture and sexist and everything else the OSR is, and how it's just an awful place, and yet at the same time pretending they are OSR so they can try to make money and get influence over the OSR. And they were pretty much kind of stuck, right? But their end goal is ultimately, as much as many of them are doing it to try to get some, desperate, Patreon dollars from the OSR, they're also doing it because they want to dismantle the OSR, right? Their goal, ultimately, the SJWs despise D&D and everything connected to D&D, including the OSR, and in some ways, especially the OSR, because the OSR is really the avant-garde of D&D design today. Because you have D&D itself, the Wizards of the Coast product. Wizards of the Coast produces 5th edition, but 5th edition is a corporate product. So it's a very safe kind of product. It's not avant-garde. No one's going to claim it's avant-garde, right? The D&D mainstream books are always going to be kind of very middle of the road and appealing to as many people as possible, within the limits of the fact that the SJWs have also infiltrated Wizards and are trying to put increasing amounts of SJW themes into the game. But as long as 5th edition keeps being the rule set, it's going to be somewhat moderate, right? Now, the OSR, on the other hand, is full of crazy creative types who are making games that just go in wild directions, right? Neither Lamentations, nor Dark Albion, nor Lion and Dragon, nor any number of other games that are OSR games would ever be published by Wizards of the Coast. And it would have nothing even to do with the, controversial subjects, or the controversy of the authors. It would just have to do with the fact that they're just not mainstream enough, right? So this is a big, big target for the SJWs. And so here they are now saying that because James Raggi posted for a picture with Jordan Peterson, that means the OSR is dead. It's become a haven of the alt-right or something like that. And now we should all abandon the OSR, right? It's just ridiculous. And really the whole call for a boycott is ridiculous. I do feel sorry for James Raggi. I think that I'm pretty sure he didn't expect this. There are a few things that mitigate how sorry I feel for him, though, because in the first place, he chose to surround himself with left-wing types and to promote them and to give them a leg up, thinking that that would somehow get loyalty, which was enormously naive of him, because we've seen this time and time again, where there are people who do that, who help creative types that are more fundamentally progressive leftists than they are creative types, and then those creative types directly turn on the person who helped them and try to take them down and then take their place. And I also feel, quite a bit less sympathetic to him because he did the worst thing he could have done now, which is he went back and made a fawning apology. He removed the picture. He said he's sorry. He said he didn't understand, and you never ever apologize to SJWs. That's not going to help him. It's not going to change anything, right? They're still going to revile him, and all he's done is shown himself to be spineless, right? As if he didn't know, or as if he didn't understand how despised Jordan Peterson is by the progressive left, and how false Because if he's read Jordan Peterson, he knows how false every claim that they've made against Jordan Peterson really is, how utterly baseless the attacks of the SJWs are. But what did he say? Well, Raggy said something along the lines of, Jordan Peterson helped me, but I'm sorry I posted the picture because I understand that he's hurt others. That, James, is a lie. Jordan Peterson has never hurt anyone. There are people who have decided to feel hurt by the fact that Jordan Peterson stands for certain things that are not fundamentally hurtful to anyone, certain things that you should be standing for, James, including free speech. There are people that claim free speech hurts them, Raggy. Are you going to turn back on free speech because of that? Are you going to say, no, actually, we shouldn't have free speech because some people feel hurt by it? Jordan Peterson hasn't hurt anyone. People have chosen to pretend or to act or to feel hurt out of either maliciousness or a sensitivity that is the product of the toxic culture they were raised in, and therefore have decided to feel offended by Jordan Peterson. So you have just helped to promote the lies that are being used to attack a person who helped you, according to your own confession, and that you clearly admire. And for nothing. It's not going to help you. They're not going to come back and say, oh, well, it's all okay now. They're going to just keep going. You've just given them blood in the water. And they're going to keep attacking you. If you'd stood strong, you'd have a bunch of people, reasonable people on the left, and of course people on the right, who would continue to stand by you because of your commitment to your own principles. But no, you decided that you were going to panic and take the apologetic route. It's just sad, frankly. And it's not going to help you. It's not going to help you at all. So there are all these people doing hand-wringing about free speech in general, about in RPGs, freedom of speech and the OSR and the toxicity of the OSR and stuff like that. And they're claiming that the fact that there are people who are right-wing, and remember, I'm pretty sure James Raggy is not one of those people, but that there are, of course, people who are right-wing in the sense for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there are some people in the OSR who are staunch social conservatives, but I think that the majority of people who are right-wing at all in the OSR, and very few of them are actually really visible about it. I mean, Ken Haidt apparently is a Republican, but would you ever know it? I mean, Alexander Macris is a cultural libertarian right-winger like myself, and that's only because he's also been involved in political writing. But if you bought Adventure Conquer King, you wouldn't necessarily know anything about his politics. Just like if you bought any of my games, you wouldn't know necessarily anything about my politics. You'd have to know me from my blog or from the RPG site or from this YouTube channel to know anything at all about my politics, because the politics aren't in the game and aren't a factor at all, right? I mean, Dark Albion, Lion and Dragon, certainly Arrows of Indra, none of those have any right-wing political elements at all, because we don't want politics in our games. I'm pretty sure everybody in the OSR, apart from the SJWs, doesn't want a political game. They don't want, the Trump train RPG, or most people don't. If anyone did want it, it would mostly just be to see the reaction from the left, but they wouldn't want it as a game, right? So there's this nonsense of this idea that there's this right-wing influence on the OSR and that it's somehow dangerous and toxic. It isn't. The people in the D&D Gate movement or other people who are right-wing within the RPG scene, we're saying everyone should just get to play what they want. There shouldn't be political litmus tests, and there shouldn't be political propagandism in RPG products, much less this kind of demand that you pass some kind of political commissar's test before you get to be part of the D&D hobby or publish games or not have your game censored or things like that. And yet somehow these mushy middle people are wringing their hands over what we're saying. While meanwhile, on the other side, you have these assholes saying, if you kill orcs in D&D, you're a white supremacist. Or this hobby was written by males, and so it's terrorism and women are unsafe here. They're worried that we're going to drive people away because we say we want everyone to play D&D. But somehow they're not worried that feminists pretending that D&D is a, toxic dump of rapists who are going to harass any woman that comes in is that's not going to drive people away, especially women, because you're lying to women and telling them that they wouldn't be safe in the D&D hobby, when in fact they would be perfectly safe in the D&D hobby. Or you have SJWs claiming that D&D is a white supremacist game because orcs are substitutes for people of color, or some nonsense like that. And so that's going to drive away people of color. I mean, if I was a Latino who had never seen, D&D before, and the first encounter I have about D&D is some SJW bullshitter saying, oh, Dungeons and Dragons is a white supremacist game, I'd be like, oh, well, shit, maybe I shouldn't look into Dungeons and Dragons, right? If I was, a D&D Latino gamer or, a woman or a gay or anything else, and I looked at somebody posting saying, we think everybody who plays D&D is part of the D&D hobby. We want everyone to play D&D. We don't want D&D to be about politics. I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. It's a game. Why should it be about politics? I mean, seriously. So my side, the cultural libertarian side, is over here. We're defending creativity and free speech. The other side, James Raggi, is trying to drive you to bankruptcy because you posed for a picture with someone that they've decided has to be silent. And the rest of you in the mushy middle, you're worried about which side now? Seriously? I, like James Raggi, believe in free speech for everyone. I believe in free speech if you're on the right, if you're on the left, if you're an artist, if you're a porn artist. Even Zach should be able to have free speech. Everyone should have free speech. Unfortunately, other people don't agree, right? Including Zach, apparently, who thinks it's perfectly okay to engage in witch hunts against people like myself and Alexander Macris, and now James Raggi, to call him ignorant and talk about how he's shouting about James Raggi in public, right? Or in private, or either way. Well, he said it in both cases. That the insane thing about all of this is that based on a single point of disagreement, that point being that James Raggi likes a psychologist that leftist hates, there are people labeling Raggi, of all people, a homophobe, a transphobe, an alt-right Nazi, etc. I mean, my dudes, listen to me. I am 99% certain that Raggi didn't vote for President Trump. James, if you ever happen to see this live stream and you did vote for President Trump and you want to complete your transformation to the right side, then feel free to tell me I'm wrong. But my guess is that you weren't a Trump voter. But in the left's constant obsession for ideological purity, and in the mushy middle's constant fear of being labeled, of being the next target, they're all taking the side of people who are demanding, essentially, the unpersoning of Raggi and calling for the undoing of all his works. They want his company bankrupted. They want the earth salted over his books. I have people in my gaming group that are from all kinds of different backgrounds. I have friends in gaming that are from all kinds of different backgrounds. Zach has more porn stars probably, but I'm pretty sure I probably have more Latino gamers than the vast majority of the people listening to this live stream in my gaming groups for obvious reasons. I've also had LGBT people. A third of my gaming group are women. I have all sorts of people of all kinds of backgrounds. I even have leftists in my DCC group, right? I've got a Trotskyite in my DCC group. I've got a pro-EU Euro socialist in my DCC group. He calls himself a centrist, but in Europe, a centrist is a fucking commie, right? So anyways, and I even have a cat boy, so I'm even tolerant of the furries. Although there's someone that always comes on to these videos and says, why haven't I killed Catboy yet? I have all these people, and every single one of these people is helped by a society that strongly values free speech, and that values free speech enough that in an ideal situation, the type of witch hunt that James Raggi is living through right now would not be happening. That somebody who expressed outrage about this, who was shocked by the fact that James Raggi took a picture with a well-known psychologist, would be laughed out of the hobby. There's a fear-based society now. Nobody at all is helped by a society that devalues free speech to the point that our society has, because now we're in a fear-based society where everybody is waiting to see who's devoured next for alleged thought crimes. And this is the terrible thing, because there are definitely some people in the progressive left who are openly and absolutely malicious, right? They despise democracy, they despise Western culture, they despise humanity, they despise D&D, and they're openly, intentionally, maliciously lying. They're doing everything possible to fulfill their dream of the deconstruction of our entire civilization. But actually, those people are a very small number. There's a much larger group of people on the left that are just too afraid to call these people, this first group of people, the lunatics that they are. And they're afraid, and they've also been indoctrinated not to, because they've been convinced by propaganda that abolishing free speech will somehow actually help marginalized people. This is based on a myopia of imagining that your side, the left, now has the power to make sure that the speech you like gets to be kept free forever, while you silence everyone that you don't like. Now, even if that was true, even if it was true that the left was always going to be in control, always going to be sufficiently in control that they would get to engage in brutal censorship of anyone they didn't like, while everybody they did like would still get all the benefits of this partially free speech, even if that was true, when you think about it, it's appalling, right? It requires a level of violence and violation of fundamental human rights that anybody who actually believes in the equality of people should be appalled by. You should be disgusted by it. And that's even in the best situation. That's even if you thought that this was really possible, that the left was always going to be in control of the culture and of the government and would be able to make sure that they could control and allow some speech and forbid other speech, and therefore free speech isn't necessary, right? But that assumption is fundamentally wrong. It's idiotic, right? The assumption of thinking that the left's control over government and society could never ever be turned around, and that all the arguments that the left is making right now to destroy free speech could end up being used to destroy the free speech and the freedom and the lives of the very marginalized people that these kingpins of the left pretend to care about, but that I think many people on the left in general actually do care about. You know, those people are going to be the victims of this, because if you remove the argument for free speech, then you remove the argument on all sides. It becomes a question of power, right? This is the fundamental argument of the postmodernists, right? That all that actually matters is power and control of narrative. And so what you want is to be the ones in power and controlling the narrative. And if you fall for this delusion that you're always going to be the ones controlling the narrative, then you can think, oh yeah, it's perfect. Now I can ruthlessly censor the people I don't like, and then all the nice people that I think are nice, that I like, will get to say whatever they want, and it'll be paradise forever. But it won't be, because sooner or later someone else will get the power. And if you've created the precedent that all that matters is who's in power to determine who gets to speak, then very soon you're going to have the side that you claim to be protecting. You're going to have all the minorities that you claim to be defending and censoring in the name of being the ones who get censored. Because I'm a historian, and I can tell you that for most of history, that's exactly what censorship has been used for. And for most of history, situations where a tiny minority are the ones that have control over a larger majority tend to be very unstable setups. And in years or decades, but sooner or later, and probably sooner, given the speed of things in our modern world, that'll get turned around. And if you've now stripped away those defenses, then you better pray that it's people like me and not other people who are much more horrible people on the other side end up being the ones who take over. Because if those horrible people take over, you've lost all argument for the free speech rights of yourselves and of any of the people you claim to represent. That's where this goes. Now, I'm a free speech defender, and I thought and I hope that James Raggi is a free speech defender, not because I think that someday it could be used against me. I'm a free speech defender because I think that free speech is a fundamental and inalienable right that everybody should have. But it's also a very good argument. It's a very good reason to be a defender of free speech, is knowing the fact that as soon as you don't defend the free speech rights of people you absolutely despise, then you've lost the precedent for other people to come along and remove your free speech rights because they despise you. That's the situation we're in. And sadly, I think James Raggi has folded like, a wet napkin, and this is why I have a lot of trouble pitying him now. So that's the bulk of what I wanted to say about this situation. I figured some of you, those of you who aren't very active on places like Google+, probably had no idea this was going on. Some of you might never have heard of the OSR. Do check out the OSR, especially my books, but there's a ton of other OSR books that are excellent, excellent products, and be sure to look them all up. And I wanted to make sure that people understood the context of what is happening here and why it has to be fought. And that even though James Raggi has never, I don't think he's ever been kind of a right-wing guy, and maybe a lot of you listening to me are right-wing guys, so I imagine not all of you, that shouldn't matter in terms of standing up for him. Maybe even to the point that he's not standing up for himself, that he's been a coward about this, right? You should still stand up for him, even if you want to criticize him for folding. Because the problem is that this is not just an attack on Lamentations of the Flame Princess. It's an attack on the entire OSR, and it's an attack on D&D itself, and it's an attack on the entire hobby. So, I guess I'll open it for more general questions now. I hope I haven't missed any questions about this subject. I'm kind of just quickly looking through the chat now to see if there's anything I missed out of here. George Wittelsbach, Lorraine McClary, Hoopy had said that the ones that hadn't gone nuts to denounce Raggi are also trying to pressure him like Zach. Well, you see, Zach is just playing both sides, because he says he hasn't denounced him. But I mean, what do you call publicly calling him ignorant and talking about how you've been screaming at him? What is that if not a mealy-mouthed weasel term denunciation? He's just trying to play both sides. Paul Smith said, I don't know why Zach supports the people who hate him. Well, the thing is, Zach is desperate to be thought of as an avant-garde lefty artist. He feels like he should belong to the SJW school, but unfortunately they hate him because he did porn. And of course, porn goes against the feminist wing of the SJWs. So they're never going to accept him. And it's really kind of tragic. It's so very sad. It's like, I don't even know how to put it. It's like a white guy, a black guy really, really trying to make the Klan like him. And it's just sad. And he spouts SJW terminology. He denounces everybody in the OSR, except himself, of course, that the SJWs denounce, but then he just doesn't understand why they keep right on denouncing him. It's just pathetic. George again says the second edition rules are going to cost him more money than the Jordan Peterson picture will. Well, maybe so. I haven't looked very much into the second edition rules of Lamentations. I should mention that I feel like I certainly owe Raggi a debt for the groundbreaking work he did in the OSR, but also because my Dark Albion game wouldn't have existed, I think, without Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Because Lamentations of the Flame Princess was the baseline game that we started playing with at the beginning of my Dark Albion campaign. And then gradually I went on very, very, very heavily modifying the rules until it became almost unrecognizable. If you look at Lion and Dragon, which is what the final rules of the Albion setting are, Lion and Dragon looks nothing really like Lamentations of the Flame Princess, except some of the most basic, OSR landmarks, the standard stuff that has to be there for Lion and Dragon to look like D&D. In other words, the stuff that, both Lion and Dragon and Lamentations have in common with the old school D&D rules. But I've been much more radical in how I changed the rules. But of course, I had that precedent to work from, right? Like I said, at the time when Lamentations was first published, it seemed really, really radical. Now it wouldn't. I mean, if he published it today, it wouldn't seem radical at all. By OSR standards, it would seem pretty tame. And maybe, second edition is likely to seem pretty tame too. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't looked at all into the second edition of Lamentations. Solomon Kane said, I started buying LOTFP largely because it's not Wizards of the Coast. It's not this polished juggernaut with consistent art style. No, it's not. It's not. But the bigger difference, because it certainly, Lamentations does tend to have consistently good production values and consistently good art. And there are a lot of OSR games that do. There are a lot of OSR games that don't have really great art, that have a kind of amateurish style to them, including some of my products. Not obviously the Dark Albion line or Lion and Dragon, that have a fantastic production value and fantastic art, thanks to the work of my publisher for Lion and Dragon, which was Dom Publishing, Dominic Cruzet. So that, certainly Lamentations books are pretty books. But I think the bigger difference is that they don't have and I think the real consistency that they don't have is this consistent middle-of-the-road corporate product look that Wizards of the Coast have. Not just look, but the material, right? You can tell that it's been produced by committee, right? And it's why I always think it's funny that some people say, oh, well, Pundit will never work for Wizards of the Coast again. I was never going to work for Wizards of the Coast. I never thought I would. And I only did to fulfill the dream of being, involved in the production of D&D main rules, right? I don't want to write product for these guys because it wouldn't be my product. It would be the product that a corporate board tells me I'm allowed to make, And I think most OSR writers really feel the same way, because OSR writers are much more creative and want to be much more creative with their products. Carrying on here, we see that George Whittlesbach says, it's funny when they talk shit about you on Discord all the while. Here on this very same Discords, Chris McDowell's Discord is hilariously toxic, especially since Zach joined. I don't know too much about that. Solomon Kane says, several months ago, Raggy hired Stacey Rex of Contessa as his community manager. It's clear she's an SJW, and I saw the problem immediately when I heard it happened. I don't know if Stacey has said anything about this. If someone knows about that, please let me know. But I'm not sure if she said something or not. I can tell you that when Contessa came out, one of the first people who supported Contessa was me. And one of the first sites that promoted Contessa was the RPG site, my site. Meanwhile, RPGNet was extremely critical of Contessa because in its original form, the whole Contessa is a online virtual convention for RPGs, especially D&D, OSR RPGs, made by women for women, run by women, okay? But the problem was, the reason that they got so much flack from the feminist SJWs was that the policy was, it's a place where all that's going to happen is gaming. The women are going to run the game, men and women can play in the games, and only gaming is going to happen. And so the attack that went against them from the feminist left was, you can't possibly do that because that makes it look like D&D isn't toxic, right? It makes it look like women can actually play D&D just fine and can run D&D and there isn't any problem, right? A convention of women in D&D has to mostly be about panels of feminists talking about how awful D&D is. And if you're not doing that, you're the enemy, right? And so you had sites like RPGNet that turned on Contessa and were deeply opposed to Contessa when it first came out, while people like myself and the RPG site, and I think James Raggy, were supportive of Contessa. The same people the SJWs hated, right? Now, I do know that since that time, over the years, Contessa and people involved with it have become more and more vocal in like SJW language, to the point that the SJWs have now embraced them, even though initially they were deeply opposed to them. So I don't know what's going on with that. I'm not sure what Stacey's reaction to this has been, to James Raggy's crimes have been. I kind of wonder too, because I've seen also that James Raggy on Twitter has been writing to, Dave Rubin of the Rubin Report, who is another cultural libertarian figure. He's a gay libertarian, so obviously the SJW left hates him, and he's a white nationalist and a homophobe, because all gay libertarians are homophobes. So I wonder what'll happen when the SJWs find out about that, right? Like, do they not know that too? It's quite amusing, and I just really don't get. It just adds to my mystery as to why Raggy doesn't wake the fuck up and realize, what it is that's going on here, and that he's not going to satisfy these people, right? Okay, so I don't see any more questions or any more comments coming in now. There's 29 of you watching, according to this, which is a really good number, by the way, considering the hour and the relatively short notice and everything. I want to thank everyone who was on here and who helped out in spreading the word and sharing the video, and I hope you share the video more. Agma, I do have people who inform me about everything that goes on that people say about me, everything, everywhere, including people in the industry, people, and those people I also don't think are doing themselves any favors by keeping secret about it, but they're not being as dumb about it as Raggy has been now. But I've got a lot of people who are writers or other people involved in the industry that write to me in private, and they say, I totally agree with the stuff you're saying. I'm so glad that someone is saying it. I can't say it because they destroy my career. Well, if everybody who told me that just, manned up and actually said something, then they wouldn't be able to destroy anyone's career. They would just, all they need to do is actually, just stand up for what they actually believe in and say no. And if these guys, if everybody did that, if everybody was this way, they would have no power at all. The SJWs, remember that, I talked about this earlier, or I think I talked about inappropriate characters. There was a study, a massive study came out from a left-wing think tank that discovered that only 8% of the US population actually believe in SJW principles. Everyone else doesn't. And an average of about 80% of the population actively hate SJW ideology. That they despise it. And ironically, that's the average number, which is very close to, I think 79% is the number of white people who say that. But among other groups like Latinos, Asians, and Native Americans, the percentage who hate SJW ideology is even higher. My fellow Latinos despise the SJWs more than you white people. I don't understand what's wrong with you all. You white guys have to get your act together. Latinos are only Schrodinger's white people. We're white when it serves the SJW to condemn us, but when when they want to paint us as victims, we're not white. So there you are. Which is funny because that's probably what some people in the alt-right think too, although I guess some of them think we're just never white. Okay, so thank you all for listening in. If there's no more questions, I really appreciate it. Most Latinos are beasting SJW. They hate SJWs, and they especially hate SJW Latinos, who are mostly just hardcore communists using SJW ideology. There's no Latino who isn't an insane Marxist that actually likes the Latinx term, right? Nobody uses that. Nobody likes it. They find it an atrocity. Okay, so mostly if those Latinx people, they'd say, they're like, it's mostly white people who are using that term. So if you're a white person, do not use that term. It's offensive to all Latinos. It's an offense to the Spanish language. Joe, yes, I am Latino. And especially now that I've heard that 82% of Latinos despise SJWs, I'm very proud to be one. Any other questions, guys? I'll give you a moment or two if there's anything else you want to add. Fan of All Metal says, Didn't know about this controversy. Just now Googled Raggy, and man, are people pissed. The Dungeons and Donuts person is cutting professional ties. How many are jumping from a ship because of this? Well, quite a few. I don't know when you got into the stream fan, but as we've been saying, quite a few people, including some very important people that were part of James Raggy circles, have declared him anathema and that he should be banned forever. And then other people have, just said that he's ignorant and that he's evil or whatever. Todd Antil asks, what's your next Dark Albion project? Well, Todd, I don't know if you've been following. What I'm currently publishing every single week is a series called RPG Pundit Presents. Okay, RPG Pundit Presents is being published by Presses Intermedia. And these are short supplements. They're small supplements. They range usually from anywhere between, 8 to 30 pages long, right? And they cost anywhere between 99 cents to like $3.99 at the most, right? And every issue is on one of, so far anyways, it's been on one of two themes, either medieval authentic or gonzo. The gonzo is from my DCC campaign mainly. The medieval authentic is all stuff, including adventure scenarios, additional magic systems, additional rules, expanded critical tables, expanded character creation, all sorts of stuff that is for Lion and Dragon and Dark Albion. There are lots of adventures set in Dark Albion and material like that you can use. Stuff on the realms of the elves, stuff on specific adventures in specific medieval towns and things like that. All based on medieval authentic sources. So that stuff you can get right now on PDF. And fairly soon, as in sometime within the next 6 months, I'm going to be releasing Presses Intermedia, is going to be releasing a compilation volume of all the medieval authentic supplements from the first 50 issues of RPG Pundit Presents. And then after that, they'll be releasing one of all the Gonzo products for those of you who are fans of Gonzo gaming. And that's really what I've been dedicating all my time to right now, because basically it means I get something new out, some new small, even though it's smaller material, I get something new out every week that is useful to my Dark Albion or Lion and Dragon fans, or every other week, because every other week I'm doing Gonzo stuff. And because eventually that'll be in a compilation volume, and that compilation volume will be print on demand. So right now you can get it on PDF if you're a big time fan. If not, well, I guess you can wait to get it on print on demand, or you can just get the ones you really are interested in now, and then get the whole thing together in one big book, print on demand when it comes out, which should be, again, in less than 6 months, I would figure. I can't say exactly, you never know. I've learned with publishers especially, you never know, because sometimes I present them the whole finished product and then it still takes a year and a half to go from there. And I totally understand, because publishing is really hard. That's why, unlike James Raggy, or unlike the nice guys at Presses Intermedia or Dom Publishing or Bedrock Games, which have published me, or Flying Mice Games, I'm not a publisher and I don't want to be one. I'm very lucky that I have enough name cachet that I can just go to a publisher and tell them, you want to publish me? And they'll say, yes, please. And there you are. Except James Raggy. He didn't want to publish me. But I guess I wouldn't have been a good match for his little friends. And I wonder, I guess that's what you get. You get the friends you pick, and the quality of the friends you pick. Flying Axeblade asks, is OSR AC1 equal to current AC19? Well, in early OSR products, like the first wave, the Grognard products, you had many of the products using backwards armor class, like the old school armor class. Most new wave OSR products, including all of mine, and including Lamentations, use regular ascending armor class, the same armor class that you see in modern D&D, which is something that really isn't, I don't think you have to have armor class. That's a landmark of OSR design. But it doesn't really matter if it's ascending or descending, because that's just a reversal of the mechanic, right? And it's, in fact, obviously much more simple to use ascending armor class. Okay, guys. Any other questions? We got still 26 of you on the. There at one point we hit, I think, 30 or 31, which is just great. Now's the time. Otherwise, I'll wrap it up. It's been a good run, and I hope that you guys have found this interesting. In any case, I'll say again, check out my Patreon. If you want me to make more live streams more often and more videos in general, then please send me a few dollars on Patreon. Or if you don't like Patreon, you can go on to my blog, therpgpundit.blogspot.com. Is that right? Sorry, .blogger. No, .blogspot. Yeah, that's right. I don't even know my own site. You can go on there, and there's anyways, the link is in my description. You can go on there, and there's a PayPal button. Please share the videos. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. You really ought to subscribe and hit the notification bell and keep checking that you're subscribed, because sometimes if a cultural libertarian YouTube channel becomes too popular, it mysteriously loses people who didn't actually unsubscribe. And share everything, okay? Share all the videos. That's a big way to help me, because the more people that see them, the more people subscribe. The more people subscribe, the more momentum that we get. And yeah, Flying Axe Blade, I'm sorry, I don't bring my cats here. Sometimes they come on up here. Right now it's really hot here, and I have one cat, the fat one, that is basically sprawled on. I have this kind of winding staircase, it's a metallic frame with wooden steps, and she's just hanging, sprawled. Her massive body, because she's an absolute unit, is just sprawled over one of the entire steps, occupying it completely. And then if I try to go down the stairs or up the stairs, she complains bitterly that she has to move. And then the other one, I have no idea where she is right now, but she's kind of, she always goes around different places. And I guess they didn't find this interesting enough to come on today. I'm sorry. They come when they come. I'm not gonna. I mean, I know that my cats get more views, but I don't just throw them on here because I don't know. That would be cat exploitation or something. Also, because they're just too hard to keep in one place. I'm kind of a wuss owner, I guess. All right, guys. I guess that's about it. Oh yeah, one more thing. Well, stay tuned. There's gonna probably be another video before this. But on Sunday, the 25th of November, there's going to be another episode of Inappropriate Characters. And it's going to be a very special episode because it's the Venger Satanis birthday special. We are doing an episode on his birthday. So all of you come out, and assuming Venger's wife lets him, he'll be on there too. And you can all wish him a happy birthday, okay? And yeah, so that's everything, I guess. Flying Axe Blade, I'll use BitChute as soon as they have a mobile app. I would love to have a BitChute account and put that on, but they really need to tell them to get a mobile app. Why don't they have a mobile app, right? I mean, like, Minds has one, MeWe has one, Gab even has one, even though no one allows them to put it anywhere. But for some reason, BitChute can't bring themselves to make an Android app, because you notice that I film on my phone, and it just would make it a hell of a lot easier for me if they had a mobile app, and I keep track of everything that's happening there on my channel on my phone. Okay, guys, I guess on that note, on that bombshell of why I don't use BitChute. Go tell BitChute to get a mobile app. And this is the RPG Pundit, currently smoking Ben Wade, oversize, plus McClintock's Syrian Latakia. See you all later. Thank you very much.